Let's talk about balance. Not balance like game balance or the shoe, but instead the speed duel skill. I asked for your guys' help on this one, thank you for that by the way, I really appreciate it. Which was clearly a good idea because I listed Katakuris as an example of a balance deck, which is stupid since I totally forgot that Katakuris were a restart deck. Stupid me, thanks for the correction. Anyway, let's do this. Balance was a very simple skill from a much simpler time. This was a skill that we pretty much had from game release that read, your starting hand will reflect the card balance of your deck. Meaning that if you had a deck that was half monsters and half spells, your opening hand of 4 cards would contain 2 monsters and 2 spells. If you had 1/3 monsters, 1/3 spells, and 1/3 traps, you would be guaranteed one of each, and that last card would be random. If your deck was 88% tin and 12% copper, your hand would be bronze. And if your deck was 100% monsters, then your opening hand would be 100% monsters. Which is I guess how normal Yu-Gi-Oh works. This skill has been used for a number of decks throughout the years. Pre-Red Eyes Roulette Red Eyes, Gravekeepers, Six Samurai, and as time progressed, the skill has gone through multiple changes, as Konami realized that while being able to control the card ratio of your opening hand is quite fair for a 2016 Unga Bunga Beatdown deck, doing the same thing with a modern deck can essentially guarantee you unstoppable god hands. So today, let's talk about some of the decks that, like Avenging Ex-Wife, left balance as a shell of its former self.
In the beginning, yeah.
The earliest decks I can find using balance are Glad Beasts and Cyber Angels back in 2017. There were definitely more before this, but DLM just doesn't go back that far. You can see that Gladiator Beasts use the skill in a pretty standard way. Looks like they mostly want to open monsters and disruption, and then maybe a bit of back row. Seems pretty simple, right? Cyber Angels, on the other hand, start to show why the skill was so abusable. The main weakness of old ritual decks is being forced to open a 3-card combo, usually composed of 1 ritual monster, 1 ritual spell, and 1 tribute material. However, with 6 possible ritual spells, a bunch of ritual monsters, and your choice of normal summon searchers, running a 2/3 monster, 1/3 spell Raylon blend pretty much guaranteed you a playable hand. And once OG Cyber Angels started comboing you, oh boy. However, as good as Cyber Angels were, the skill was never actually hit from them, probably because they were so good that Cyber Angels themselves had to be nerfed, and so balance got to live free for another day until...
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch?
This is the deck that was originally requested for this video, which makes sense since it's the one that really showed why balance was, ironically, unbalanced. Noble Knights were released in May 2018 in the Crusaders Battleground box. And conceptually, they're very simple. You've got the Knights of the Round Table, and without their weapons, the Round Table might as well have been at McDonald's, because they're basically just your average Joes. However, just like your standard isekai protagonist, once you hand them their swords, they turn into unstoppable blade demons. Each knight has an effect it gains once they acquire their sharp sticks. Except for this dumbass. Medraut, the main opener, gets a deck summon. Dristin? Who named this guy? An MLM mom? Sorry, Dristin has an effect that blows up another face-up card on the field. Boars lets your opponent help you find a sword card, and the rest don't see as much play. Then on top of that, the swords themselves have effects. Put simply, blows up face downs, gains life, prevents destruction, and gains 1000 attack, for a bit. In addition, the swords have this other effect that lets you re-equip them once per turn if they're destroyed, which I think is supposed to represent you looting your friend's body when they die.
Unbelievable.
This version of the deck was basically Dristin Control, where you use Dristin and Arfaduder to blow up your opponent's field, use Double Cyclone to get free back or removal, and juggle between your different noble arms to wear them down and eventually kill them. But like all things, the deck has one major weakness. The deck forces you to run a large amount of knights and noble arms, and as a result, the deck has unplayable hands if you don't open a good mix of them. Well, guess what skill fixes that?
Balance.
This first version of Balanced Noble Knights had all the aforementioned of Noble Knights with 0 brick hands. And while it may not have been as much of a contender as some of the other decks at that time, looking at you for a hire, it was good enough that in June 2018, Balance finally got its first hit. Now it reads, your starting hand reflects the balance of your deck, so long as you have a minimum of 6 monsters, 6 spells, and 6 traps. Yup, no more custom ice cream flavors, now all decks have to be at least a little bit Neapolitan. Of course, Noble Knights just saw that and they just And while it didn't exactly kill the deck, it did slow it down a little. And this is pretty much the state they stayed in until
New Noble Nut Exceed Structure deck. We went 9-0.
in November 2020, we got the Noble Knight Structure deck. In it, we got a new opener in the form of Merlin, some extra deck monsters, as well as the in-archetype trap. And you'll never guess what skill they came back with.
Cause they couldn't buy, had the balance.
That's right, Balanced Noble Knights were back again, but this time they're running decks bigger than your mom. Look at this monstrosity. And now, with new tools, they were ready to wreak havoc once again. Our old friends Medrot and Dristan, as well as their metal playthings, never left. But now we're gonna need an even rounder table, because we've got some new members. We've got our Forgius, the rank 4 that blows up back row. Our 5gius, the rank 5 that blows up monsters. And King Custard, the rank 4 with the hand bounce. 2 of these came with floating effects, allowing them to float into other knights and shift around equip spells. Also, hang on, think about this for a second.
What?
In addition to monsters, we also got an assortment of traps in the last 3 years that could be used to meet the balance requirement. We've got all the normal staples, don't need to mention these, on top of the Noble Knight trap. The trap's regular effect is okay, letting you draw cards, but its graveyard effect lets you quick effect summon from the deck. And that thing was bullshit. And that wasn't the only graveyard effect the deck had either. Merlin, who could serve as a 1-card opener by tributing himself, also had a graveyard quick effect that would Xyz summon Noble Knights using monsters on your field, meaning that you could dodge interruption during either player's turn and then immediately use King Custard or our Forgius to disrupt your opponent's field. This new version still went into Medrot, or Merlin into Medrot, but now usually went from Medrot into Boars. Because of how Boar's effects works, taking 3 weapons from your deck and forcing your opponent to pick 1, and then sending the rest to the grave, there was a 2/3 chance that you would send the trap to the grave, giving you instant access to it the following turn. Between the multiple quick effects in grave, the numerous floating effects, nearly no dead hands, and the many ways the deck could blow up cards, the deck found pretty good success. So much success, in fact, that the skill was hit again. Now, no more monster effects in the main phase, or special summoning for you in your first turn. Now after 3 years, this was actually enough to get Noble Knights to stop using balance, because monster effects and special summoning are kinda necessary for the deck. Now of course, this wasn't enough to get Noble Knights players to stop playing Noble Knights. I've met Noble Knight players, and nothing short of actual death will stop them from playing their favorite deck.
Let me see what you have! No!
And as a result, they had to switch over to Sartorius' Light Barrier skill, where they remain today. Now, you'd think being locked out of basically playing the game for your first main phase would be enough to kill balance for good. But crazily enough, the skill still sees play. Because of how it's worded, there's a few decks that don't really need their main phase, usually because they can either activate effects after that, or during your opponent's turn. The first is Trimids, the archetype that sounds like the History Channel trying to explain just how the pyramids were made.
Must have been a very advanced culture. Probably extraterrestrials.
Trimids really like to end on 1 monster, 1 field spell, and some disruption, since a lot, and by a lot I mean most, of their gameplay is done on their opponent's turn. Just being able to set up a consistent board is usually enough for them. The other deck that uses balance is War Rocks. War Rocks are a couple of mountain hooligans that base the majority of their gameplay during the battle phase. And while the balance version does lose out on some plays if you're going first, usually opening into the wonderful traps we have in this game is enough to make up for it. Will balance ever get hit again? I think it's definitely possible. There's definitely some archetypes out there that are more spell or trap related if we ever get things like Eldritch or Labyrinth. Being able to open a good selection of spells and traps while leaving monsters in your hand might force it to get nerfed again. How would they nerf it, you ask? Check this out. Aw yeah. But anyway, that's just speculation. All in all, I hope that's a relatively good summary of one of our most unbalanced skills in this game, balance. Thank you guys for watching, and if you have any other suggestions, leave them in the comments below.